Hi, I'm Paul Kyogan from GK Tuition, and in this video I want to talk to you about algebra. Now the question that I've chosen to go through here is 2019 Paper 1 Question 4. In the first part of this question we have two fractions on the left and one fraction on the right, and we're asked to solve to find x. If you are adding or subtracting fractions, the easiest thing to do is to get a common denominator. So I need to find a common denominator for these three fractions. Or in other words, I need to find the smallest number that 2, 5 and 10 will divide into. Clearly the smallest number that 2, 5 and 10 will divide into is 10. 10 is the common denominator in this scenario. And now what you need to do is you have to figure out what goes on the top. So we're going to start off with the first fraction. On the top of the first fraction is 3x plus 1. And then you have to ask yourself, how many times does 5 divide into 10? 5 divides into 10 twice. So that means I need to multiply that by 2. And that's all you need to do there. And now my next term, now I need to deal with the next fraction. The next fraction I've got a plus and then it's x minus 2. Since there's two terms there, it's easier to put it in brackets. And now you need to ask yourself, how many times does 2 divide into 10? Clearly 2 divides into 10 5 times. So you need to multiply this by 5. And now I just go on to the next fraction. The next fraction I start off with equals 47, and I ask myself the same question again. How many times does 10 divide into 10? Clearly 10 divides into itself one time. So it's 47 times 1. Now the whole point of this is that if you have a fraction and there's an equals on the top, you can just eliminate the bottom of the fraction. You can just eliminate your denominator. So that means I'm only dealing with the top of the fraction. I've got one equation, I've got one unknown, I'll be able to find the value of x. So let's just multiply this out and see what happens. 2 multiplied by 3x is 6x. 2 multiplied by 1 is 2. 5 multiplied by x is 5x. And 5 multiplied by minus 2 is minus 10. And I know that that is equal to 47 times 1 is just 47. Obviously my best bet here is to just bring all the x's to one side, all the numbers to the other side. I already have all the x's on the left. It's just 6x plus 5x will give me 11x. And on the left I have a plus 2 and I have a minus 10. Plus 2 minus 10 gives me minus 8. And that's equal to 47. Clearly I want to get the 8 to the other side, so I add 8 to both sides. And I can say that 11x is equal to 47 plus 8, or in other words, 11x is equal to 55. Now if 11x is equal to 55, I'm going to continue over here. Clearly in order to get x on its own, I just need to divide both sides by 11. If you divide by 11, you'll get x is equal to 55 divided by 11, so your final answer is x is equal to 5. So that's all you need to do for part A in this question. We're given two equations and two unknowns, and we're asked to solve the simultaneous equation. Now this one is a lot more complicated than usual because there's an x squared and a y squared in it. Because there's squareds in it, it means we have to solve this one by substitution. So we need to start with the first equation, the one without any squareds in it. And we need to isolate either the x or the y. In this case, it's a lot easier to isolate the x value. Or in other words, we just want to get x on its own, so we want to bring the y to the other side. So I can rewrite the top line. If I brought the y across, it becomes plus 5y minus 13. Or in other words, I can just rewrite the top line as x equals 5y minus 13. And now this is the key to answering the question. I'm now going to rewrite the second equation, which is x squared plus y squared equals 13. Except instead of an x, I can sub in 5y minus 13. So instead of x squared, it's going to be 5y minus 13 to be squared. And then I've got a plus y squared, and that's equal to 13. So that's my substitution. And now this question is a lot easier, because now I've got one equation and one unknown, which means I can solve this to find the value of y. Now the complicated bit is 5y minus 13 to be squared. Notice that 5y minus 13, I've actually simplified it over here. That's 5y minus 13 by 5y minus 13. In order to multiply out double brackets, it's the first thing in the first bracket by the second bracket, and then the second thing in the first bracket by the second bracket. If you multiply that out, we end up with 25y squared minus 130y plus 169. Which means that instead of this bracket, I can plug in those three values. 25y squared minus 130y plus 169. And then I also have a y squared at the end there, and it's equal to 13. Now at this stage, you should notice you have a y squared, you have a y, and you have a number. In which case it means we've got a quadratic equation. So we just need to group like terms here. 25y squared plus 1y squared gives me 26y squared. The only y term is minus 130y. And this will be 169, and I'm going to bring the 13 across. When you bring the 13 across, it's going to become negative. So 169 minus 13 gives me 156. So this is my quadratic equation. Now the numbers are colossal here. Clearly, it's going to be incredibly difficult to factorize this. So what you need to realize is there's a common factor that I can divide everything by. I can divide everything here by 26, and then the numbers are going to be a lot nicer. 26 divided by 26 is 1y squared. Minus 130 divided by 26 is minus 5y. And plus 156 divided by 26 is plus 6. And that's equal to 0. It's much more achievable to factorize this one. The factors of 6 that add up to minus 5 are minus 2 and minus 3. So my factors here are just y minus 2 and y minus 3 equals 0. But remember, we're not looking for the factors, we're trying to find the values of y. So to solve this one, we just let each bracket equal to 0. I can say that y minus 2 equals 0 and bring the minus 2 to the other side. It means y is equal to plus 2. That's my first value. I can also say that y minus 3 is equal to 0. I can bring the minus 3 to the other side and it becomes positive, and I can say that y is equal to plus 3. So my two values for y are plus 2 and plus 3. Once we've found values for y, we now sub back into one of our original equations and we can find the value of x. Okay, so once we have our two y values, it's relatively straightforward to get our two x values. Remember, at the start we said that x is equal to 5y minus 13. So I've done this twice here. If y is equal to 2, that means I'm just subbing in, instead of a y, I sub in a 2. And I can say x is equal to 5 times 2 minus 13. And x works out as minus 3. Now we don't have to, but realize if you have an x and a y value, you can write it as a coordinate. So my answer here, I could say when x is minus 3, y is equal to 2. And in similar vein, we sub in the other y value. The other y value we got was y equals 3. When we work this one out, x works out as 2. So that means my other point is when x equals 2, y is equal to 3. So there are your two answers in this case. Now I hope all of that makes sense. If there's anything you're unsure of there, or you want me to clarify it, just send me an email or let me know in class and I can explain it a little bit differently.